is poison to a picture. Use it only in highlights. These are the words of Peter Paul Rubens, a man whose paintings emphasized movement, colour and sensuality, emphasised the very essence of life itself during the Renaissance, which responded to ideals of forms and frames by returning to the ways of antiquity, as if what they had before them wasn't good enough in reality. Now, the extravagance of his portraits bring to life their subject, and the subject of beauty that rests at the heart of any piece of art. But his statement on the use of white is certainly provocative, when the painting behind me is evocative of a classical style of beauty. Rather than a highlight, Venus takes the spotlight with her white skin and womanly essence that only serves to highlight her presence. She is right there, demanding to be noticed, a slight smile at the knowledge that she really is the focus. But the image that is reflected in Cupid's glass is a reflection of an ideal that has since passed in our day and age. Indeed, look at how the light reflects off her skin, refracting 100 ideals that would today be revealed as fat or plus size. Beauty, it seems, is transient, although this image is permanent, and what this canvas reveals is a narrow ideal that, though produced in 1614, paints a picture of exclusion that still exists today. So with that in mind, I tried to find a word that rhymed with beautiful. I'm a poet, you see, so it seems only natural to me that this speech should flow like the contours of her body. Honour the glow of her look, which hooks your soul like a fishing line. I wanted my words to paint all that was unheard in this portrait of the gaze, which operates in more ways than one. I wanted to use language to colour in the baggage of history and prejudice that damages our very sense of self when we align beauty with light and ugliness with a darkness that must be pushed to the side of the frame, tamed by a bias that we should be ashamed of. Because I'm not just talking about Venus, with her golden hair and sensual stare carefully constructed on the canvas. Instead, I want you to look at the right-hand side, at the inky cheekbones that shrink from focus, at the pearls that frame her neck like she was her own portrait, at the jaw that mimes cartography lines, tracing the space where a whole race has been silenced. I want you to shift your gaze, take in all of it rather than the parts, because this piece of art was created by the hands of a man who could, it seems, never understand that beauty is not a gift to be given, or a tight definition, or a specific condition. The brush he used could never reduce the fact that we are, from our very first steps, induced into a way of seeing that is not seeing itself, that fails to see itself. The paint he applied could never hide the irony that beauty really is in the eye of the beholder, but I ask you, when that is moulded into something unrecognisable, or something desirable to a narrow elite, does it cease to be beautiful? 4 centuries have wasted by in the space between then and now, but there remain ideals of beauty that stay in status, ideals of beauty that I would term sexist and racist. When I first gazed at that frame, I failed to see the maidservant. She was hidden not just in the furthest edges of the sketch, but also in the furthest stretch of my imagination. Because to think of beauty is to think within a precondition in which white may really be a poison. You see, our horizon of vision is tempered by the privilege we are born into. And the image I grew up with as a white child was often a face like my own, young, pale, distinctly Western, and I never guessed that this was an issue. And it makes us uncomfortable to talk about privilege, to talk about the gifts we have been given without asking, to talk about the poison that is a part of us, the poison we mistake for blood, the poison that controls us. So I tried to find a word that rhymed with beautiful. A word that would transform beauty into something soluble, but the only thing that arrived was dutiful. A term that signals something immutable, conforming of sorts. To be dutiful is to be controlled in the same way as to be beautiful is to conform to an elusive entity that is graced on the rare few with a specific kind, a specific shade of identity. So searching for synonyms instead, the results were infinite, but the top 5 are indicative of an attitude that controls and constrains, binds and ties and restrains, frames and reframes, producing an ideal of beauty that doesn't suit me or anyone, in fact. I was offered by Google the words youthful, usable, dreadful, truthful, and lastly, perhaps unsurprisingly, control. But like the many bodies that are objected to by magazines, expected to mirror the slender figurines we give to girls on birthdays, rejected by a society that no longer defines beauty as health or symmetry, but as a tall, thin white woman with a specific kind of femininity, I reject those synonyms as beautiful. I object to them, and we should dissect them with the precision of a surgeon, or a well-steeled tongue that can certainly inflict a cut deeper than a blade when the term ugly is traded on the playground. So perhaps aptly, let's start with youthful, a word to be swallowed with a spoonful of cynicism, found to be hollow when we consider the sickening statistic that the average girl in the UK will first notice with quickening awareness that men look at her sexually at 12 years old. 12 years old, a child, failed by society that perpetually sexualizes. Mild minds initiated by white van drivers and magazine writers that teach them how to look sexy. Teenage girls dressed in freckles and ties, not realizing that they are buying into a currency that idolizes and then defiles innocence. Or a culture that attempts to iron out the wrinkles of newsreaders and media speakers, peddling the rhetoric of a more youthful membership, selling us potions and creams and the notion that once we hit a certain age, well, the curtain is drawn over our ambition and our worth. Success is equated to beauty, which is negated by old age. There is a refusal to acknowledge that those lines are flawless, mapping the laughter and tears at the heart of many years that shows a life well lived, well loved, and well learned. Those lines are earned. And yet, we continue to tell young women that their value lies first and foremost in their physical appearance through a sequence of messages that curse them into a search for an ideal that eludes them, an ideal that reverts them into objects. So let's now talk about being usable, because we sell beauty. We are all muses, painted and abused, confused by demands for the impossible. You see, we must be slim and curvy, tanned and pale, quiet and feisty, waxed and shaved, malleable in all manner of ways, so that the term beauty becomes something we try to reclaim and reshape. But we are the ones who are reshaped. 45,000 cosmetic surgeries drowned the NHS last year with a 48% increase in liposuction, squeezing out the suggestion that we must question why our standards of beauty are so thin. We are the ones who are reclaimed. Our breasts sold on page 3, compressed between the weekly shock of washing up liquid and Tetley tea. And for too long, these images of surgery and seduction have been an image of whiteness, the lightness of skin made obvious. Going shopping for foundation with a black friend of mine, we look at the line of cosmetics that state the shade of my skin as natural. Whilst her complexion is too dark to even be considered on the spectrum of beauty, she is made invisible. And yet she tells me of her frustration when she sees how the bodies of black women are reduced to a twerk, a circus of MTV backing dancers, used to perpetuate an ideal of sexualization and submission. Agents of sensuality without a sense of agency, made visible as props, to be used by a society that plunders them. It might have been 1614 when that canvas was produced, but underneath the paint remains an ideal that permeates our conception of beauty, which is dreadful. The very idea of ugliness repulses us, an insult instilled in us in those formative stages, forming opinions that hold sway over our social order, bonding, relations, and more than that, our sense of self. It controls us, forcing fear into our souls, and we are told that we cannot choose to be beautiful, but rather we are told we are. Beauty is something bestowed on us from others when it should be something owed to us by our own mouths, and it has the power to do such damage. When the terms ugly and beauty challenge our self-worth, and worse than that, our self-belief, and I believe that that is what is truly dreadful. When we believe in a beauty industry that tells us that beauty is something you should squeeze into, freezing time to stop the giveaway lines and whitewashing us into silence, the monochrome world of bodily beauty fails in its duty to make us feel beautiful. Because that beauty is not truthful. We may try to be objective, but that is only effective when you ignore the fact that beauty is not factual. It is not created in a vacuum. The term beautiful is a piece of architecture that we have now deconstructed. An artifact that is retracted every century as degrees of beauty fade from memory and are replaced by new fads and fashions. We do not see truthfully. We see through the biases of race and age and sexuality, of class and gender and ability. Our cultures construct us. And then our identities control us, and we need only look at Venus to be reminded that it is only a matter of time until what we say is beautiful is redefined by our society and our prejudice, by our history and our genesis. We need to take ownership of that. Stop seeing ourselves through someone else's eyes and realise that to be beautiful is an active activity. That beauty is to be found not on a canvas, but in actuality. Beautiful. I've said it enough times. I've covered it with enough rhymes that I wonder if it is starting to lose its meaning. Is it still in control? Or have we begun to realise that the imperative to be what society calls beautiful is so negative, when it creates a narrative that is, in reality, ugly? We must return to privilege, to the ways of seeing that shape how we think and how we live. Because even when I talk about surgeries and products, how many of you imagine the image of a black body? When I talk about ideals, how many of you reveal a white adolescent without a blemish or a wrinkle? We cannot help the box we are born into, but we can define its parameters. If white is a poison, for example, then let us highlight its presence. Because to talk about beauty with objectivity is a fallacy. To talk about beauty is to talk of a colour. It cannot be done, and instead we utter lines that are drawn for us within the confines of a patriarchal prison, and rather than a prison which refracts a multitude of shades, that is a circle that offers no escape. We need to draw out those motives and draw our own lines, lose control, and remind ourselves of the paint we adopt and the canvases we have chopped and cropped into our own narrow frames. Think about the colour white and how you would describe it. Look at all of Rubens' canvas and how we try to hide it. Thank you.